My name is Calvin. I'm 68 years old. I drove back from my brother Edmund's funeral in Thunder Bay, with both hands on the wheel of the same Buick I've owned for 19 years. 17 hours. Most of it in one stretch. My chest felt hollow the whole way because Edmund was my only sibling, for years younger than me, and now he was in the ground, and I was the last one left from our family. I need to tell you what I overheard the moment I walked through my son's kitchen door, because it changed everything. 7 years ago, my son Hugh invited me to move in after my wife Marlene passed from ovarian cancer. His exact words, "Dad, you shouldn't be rattling around alone. We've got the finished basement. Come live with us. Be near the grandkids." I believed him.
God help me.
The finished basement became the laundry room within a year. I was moved into a converted sunroom. Single-pane windows, no insulation, a space heater that tripped the breaker whenever the dishwasher ran. In winter, I could see my own breath when I woke up. Marlene used to tell me I absorbed things too much, that I let people walk on me because I didn't want to make a fuss. She wasn't wrong. So I kept quiet. 3 weeks before Edmund's funeral, his lawyer called me. My brother had named me his sole beneficiary. Edmund had started a small trucking operation in the 90s hauling pulpwood and quietly built it into a freight logistics company running routes from Thunder Bay all the way into British Columbia. He never married, drove a beat-up Silverado, ate at the same diner every morning, lived like he had nothing. But he'd been building something the whole time. His lawyer sat me down and slid a folder across the desk. 3 properties in northwestern Ontario. A dairy farm, a cattle ranch, and a log house on Lake Superior sitting on a private cove. Then she took off her glasses and told me that after taxes and the sale of the company, Edmund had left me 22 million Canadian dollars. I asked her to repeat the number.
She did. 3 times.
He'd never let on. Not once. 3 years ago, I'd even wired him $800 because I thought he was struggling after a bad winter. He thanked me, took the money, and the whole time, he was worth more than I could have earned in 20 lifetimes at the steel mill. I drove back from Thunder Bay with that knowledge sitting in my chest like a hot coal, and I told no one. Not Hugh. Not Pamela. Not a soul. I pulled into the driveway on Edenbrook Drive at almost 11 at night. Lights on in the kitchen. I came in through the side door like always, hung on my coat, and was about to call out that I was home, when I heard Pamela's voice through the swinging door. "We can't keep doing this, Hugh. 7 years I've been patient. I've been a saint about it." Hugh, my own son, his voice low and tired, said, "I know. I know." I stood there in my socks. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Pamela kept going. He came back from his brother's funeral. The brother had nothing. So now Calvin's even more useless than before. He's just an old man eating our food, getting older and more confused every month. Then she laid out the plan, clean, rehearsed, like she'd been carrying it for a long time. Maplewood Glen, a memory care facility. His pension would cover most of it. They just needed him to sign a power of attorney before things got any worse. The Oakville house they were building closed in October. They needed me out of the picture by then. "Cleanly," she said, "with paperwork that holds up." Hugh said he couldn't put his dad in a home. Pamela said, "You are. You absolutely are. Because the alternative is he lives here until he dies and we lose 10 years of our lives." 7 years was the upper limit. We're past it. I backed up.
Put my coat on.
Picked up my boots and carried them to the curb before I sat down and put them on. My hands were shaking. Then I got in the Buick and drove to a motel off the 401. I sat on the edge of a polyester bedspread for 3 hours, not crying, not sleeping, just staring at the wall. By morning, I had a different man's plan. I called Edmund's lawyer first thing and drove back up to Thunder Bay. Over the next 9 days, we built a fortress. We set up a numbered holding company with me as sole director. We moved the 22 million out of RBC into accounts across 3 banks, none of them near Hugh's neighborhood. We registered all 3 properties to the holding company. I had a full cognitive assessment done by a geriatric specialist who declared me sharp as a tack, and I recorded myself on video explaining every decision, calm, clear, dated, to be used as evidence if anyone ever tried to challenge my mental capacity. Then I found out something that changed the shape of everything. Hugh and Pamela's house wasn't free and clear. They were underwater on a private second mortgage, behind on 3 payments and 90 days from default. The lender was already preparing to call the loan. I bought that loan through my numbered company. By Wednesday morning, I owned the second mortgage on my son's house. I drove home. I went back to living the same quiet life, except now my eyes were open. I let Pamela see me forget where I'd put my keys. Let her find me standing in the laundry room, looking confused. I watched her reach for her phone the second she thought I'd turned away, documenting every moment, building her case. Every night after they went to bed, I went down to the laundry room where I'd hidden a small recorder, and I wrote down everything I'd heard that day, dates, times, direct quotes. Every mention of Maplewood Glen. Every mention of power of attorney. But I also got my son back, on Thursdays, when Pamela was at Pilates and we had 3 hours alone. The first few weeks, he was distant. By the 4th Thursday, he started talking. Really talking. He told me his marriage was hard. That the Oakville build was Pamela's dream, not his. That he'd lost friends because she didn't like their wives. That he didn't know how to push back anymore. One morning he looked at me across the kitchen island and said, "Dad, I'm sorry the sunroom is cold. I keep meaning to fix it, and I never do. I'm just tired all the time." I put my hand on his arm and said, "Hugh, when you have something hard to tell me, you tell me. I'm your father. I'm not going anywhere." His eyes got wet. He nodded. Then Pamela came home early, and the moment closed up like a fist. 2 days before Christmas, she made her move. Roast on the table. Wine poured. A folder on the sideboard. After the plates were cleared, she slid it across to me with that small, tight smile. Power of attorney for property. Power of attorney for personal care. Both naming Pamela as primary attorney. A pen in her hand. I said I'd like to read it over and take it to my own lawyer first. She said, "Let's not drag it out. Why don't you sign the property one tonight?" I smiled and said, "I think I'd rather have a fresh head on it. Let me sleep on it." I took the folder to the sunroom. I did not sign anything. That night, I called the lawyer and told her it was time. We set the date for January 8th. January 8th. Mrs. Tremblay and Mr. Baudry, my attorney, flew down from Thunder Bay. We drove out to Mississauga together. Hugh's truck in the driveway. Pamela's Lexus beside it. I let them in through the front door. Pamela came out of her office with her phone in her hand, and the color left her face when she saw 2 strangers in suits standing in her foyer. We sat at the kitchen island. Mrs. Tremblay slid a folder across the table. The second mortgage on the house at Edenbrook Drive had been called. Power of sale completed. Title now rested with a numbered company, solely owned by me. As of 3 days ago, I was the legal owner of their house. Pamela said it was a mistake. Mrs. Tremblay said it wasn't. I looked at Pamela and I said, 7 weeks ago, I came home from my brother's funeral and stood in the mudroom and heard you call me a parasite. I heard you planned to have me declared incompetent so you could move me to Maplewood Glen and turn my room into your office. I have 6 weeks of recordings, Pamela. I have your notes, your brochures, the doctor's appointment you made without asking me, and the power of attorney forms you tried to get me to sign on December 23rd. If I choose to, I can hand all of it to the police. You will lose your law license, your partnership, and possibly your freedom. Hugh stood up so fast his chair fell over. Pamela, what did you do?
She started crying.
Not the real kind. I said, Hugh, sit down. He sat. Crying too, but his was real. You have until the end of February to vacate. I'll give you a fair settlement. The girls can finish their school year. But I am done being treated like furniture in a house where I was promised I'd be family. Then I told them about Edmund's estate. The 22 million. The farms. The house on Lake Superior. I told them I had planned, on that long drive home from the funeral, to give Hugh half of it. $11 million. Because that's what fathers do for their sons. That's not what's happening now. The rest of what my brother spent his life building is going to a foundation that helps elderly Canadians being financially abused by their own families get out of those situations and into safe housing. I'm going to call it the Marlene Foundation, after your mother-in-law, who told me before she died that you had a coldness in you. I didn't believe her. I paused. I should have. Hugh followed me outside, barefoot. January cold. He said, "Dad, I swear I didn't know how far it had gone." I said, "I think you knew some of it, son. I think you chose not to know all of it. There's a difference, but it matters less than you think. When you've figured out who you want to be, call me. I'll be at Stewart's. After that, I'm going up to the Lake Superior house. Call me when you have something to say that's yours." I got in the Buick. That was 4 months ago. I'm writing this from the kitchen of the log house on Lake Superior. The water is gray today. The ice is just coming off the cove. I had a contractor come up last month to insulate the place properly and put in a new propane furnace. I am warm for the first time in 7 winters. Hugh left Pamela. He drove up to see me last weekend, and we sat on the dock without talking for the first hour. Then he started, and he didn't stop for a long time. I let him say everything he needed to say. Briar, my older granddaughter, reached out on her own and apologized. Cassidy isn't ready yet. That's all right. I'm not going anywhere. The Marlene Foundation was incorporated in March. We've already helped 17 seniors in Ontario find their way out of situations like mine. Mrs. Tremblay sits on the board. Stuart too. I gave Hugh a job there helping with intake. He's good at it. He listens. He's becoming his mother's son again, slowly. Marlene used to say a person needs 3 things: character, sense, and grit. I had grit my whole working life. But what I was showing in that sunroom wasn't grit. It was surrender dressed up as patience. It took me 68 years to understand the difference. If any part of this story sounds like your own kitchen, I want you to hear this. Your blood does not get to treat you like garbage just because they share your name. Love is not the same as access. Family is not the same as permission. And it is never too late to say no more. Now I'm going to pour a coffee and wait for the loons to come back to the cove. Edmund used to say there's no sound in the world like the first loon of spring. I'm going to sit on that dock and find out if he was right.